Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Kunz. I'm a customer experience consultant at UserTesting. I've been with the company for about coming up on 7 years. My background is as a researcher, but today I get to chat with another researcher, one of my favorite things to do. So that's my background. Deron, could you just kind of give us a brief intro to you and a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of dive into the topic.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Deron. I'm a user researcher at Slack, like I mentioned earlier. And my background is mostly qualitative methods. I come from experience where I've done like a lot of public sector research, and now am taking a deep dive into the product world here at Slack, and happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. So we've chatted a little bit previously, and so there was a number of things that I was like, oh, I definitely want to pick your brain on all this stuff. So, but the main topic that we want to talk about today is what was the transition for you going from, the majority of your work being all in person, and then some of the learnings as you made that switch to doing most of it remote. A lot of that was due to the pandemic, but
Yeah.
you also got access to user testing, so I'm sure that changed your work. But first, can you kind of tell us a little bit about some of the work you were doing as an in-person, some of the in-person research that you were doing, just to kind of give us an example of what that kind of looked like and what that process was like?
Sure. So it's interesting, like as you were breaking it down, you made me think about my experience recently, kind of like in tiers almost, where I had some experience where I was fully in person and sitting next to folks and having conversations. Then I kind of pivoted into a remote research environment that was still kind of manual without the assistance of, some of the tools that user testing provides. And then now I'm kind of like in this full remote and automate. I have support from like automated features and things like that. So there's these three uniquely different experiences. That first tier, if you will, was definitely, old school ethnography, journalistic style, where most of the work that I was doing was qualitative methods, and I was going into various places to have conversations with real people. Like I mentioned, my experience was in public sector. So I was supporting like state government agencies and some federal government agencies with assistance and ways that they could improve how their services are delivered to citizens digitally. And I would literally be sitting down with them, running through prototypes, having them click things. So it was a very tactile, hands-on experience. As you mentioned, the pandemic came and things had to change a bit. And that's when I started to transition into some remote research, but was in no way automated, right? So still, handwriting notes, printing out user guides on my end, but setting up now Zoom calls to go through prototypes with folks, which was kind of difficult because you would have to rely on like their system, how tech savvy they were. Did they have the ability to like, open up the prototypes and actually access them, connectivity issues. So it was a little all over the place, trying to get things, situated in that remote environment. And then now I'm in an environment where I'm using usertesting.com, and there's just so many more features available to me to be able to like standardize the research and really just like ensure I have a sense of reliability in each research session that I do. So it's been a change and a very drastic one, but I do like where I am now.
Interesting. Can you talk to us a little bit about how did you go about like recruiting and scheduling? Because I know when you're doing a lot of in-person stuff, that's a lot of the kind of admin work that you have to figure out how to organize and logistics, and kind of talk a little bit about that, and then how has remote kind of changed where you spend the bulk of your time?
Yeah, so I think one of the good things about working in the public sector is people want to talk about government services a lot. And by people, I mean citizens, especially folks who are in positions of need. So as I mentioned earlier, I did support state and federal agencies and some local government agencies. And the services that they were delivering to citizens were very critical social services like Medicaid, food assistance programs and things like that. And there were also a lot of community organizations that existed as mediators of services between the citizens and the government agencies. And 9 times out of 10, the community organizations would provide or be a pipeline to actually talk to citizens. So the actual work of getting on the phone, calling, emailing community organizations, or Googling community organizations to reach out to depending on the need was very much present. And that would represent a very top heavy research plan, because I would have to dedicate at least a couple of days, maybe a week or two, depending on how big the project was, to just sourcing participants. So it was fun work, but it was tedious work. Now in user testing, the recruiting is basically automated. So everything down from the demographics are already preloaded. So I have the opportunity to go and filter my recruit by need there. And then if there are specific things that I want represented in that recruit, I have the opportunity to use screener questions to get those folks in there. And then if I want to go beyond that to get specific kinds of users, that represent a specific user group at Slack, then we have the opportunity to work with our data team and make that happen. So, and all of that happens almost instantaneously. I mean, last Friday, I actually had something I had to do, and I woke up that day with a research brief, and I went to sleep that night with the research complete. So it's a quick turnaround, and it's definitely drastically different from, like I said before, having that week or a couple of days of top heavy work built into the research schedule.
Yeah, I think the recruitment piece, I always hear people just talk about like how much time and effort that takes, and
yeah,
with remote that speeds up the process. Part of one of the things that you also kind of mentioned the last time we chatted a little bit was some other things that have been able to improve and speed up. So not even just the recruitment, but I think you kind of talked about just being able to test at scale with more people, and then just a couple other. I think you kind of mentioned something about transcripts. Can you just talk a little bit about how has being able to connect people remotely kind of allowed you to get more voices into your research?
Well, so it's allowed me to generate a very good speed to insights. And what I mean by that is, talking to a couple of people a day over weeks at a time, you have to dedicate twice as much or 3 times as much time to synthesizing insights. So the weight of the work can become very heavy very quickly. The good thing about what I've been able to do remotely is I've been able to scale up how many participants I have in a particular project immensely. And by scaling, I don't only mean volume wise, but I also mean approach as well. So one great thing that I've been able to do is like a lot of unmoderated testing, where I've been able to send folks to a link and just have them do something by themselves. There's a lot to learn when people have to interact with a system without my assistance or my guidance. So, are the fail rates in that research approach higher than a moderated session? Are there unique fail points that I may not have been able to identify because, I'm not coaching them to the end? That has been like super valuable, and it's just offered me unique insights and at a larger quantity, because so many people can come through an unmoderated session at any given time. And then the other thing you mentioned about transcripts, I've gone from having to sit down and actually write or type the the commentary from a research session myself to where it's been being auto-generated. So there's just so much time being afforded to me by the things that are available in the platform, and it's just made things a lot easier, to be frank. And I don't know what I would do without auto transcript now, because I can just go through and mark up the clips that I want and make them available for notes later. It just makes the synthesis super easy.
Interesting. So you commented on one thing that I want to kind of take the opposite side. So kind of having that moderator bias, or you being able to coach somebody, do you find that removing that has a negative impact? So instead of seeing, are there other error rates caused by not having a moderator? Do you find that impacts your research at all, or do you find that depending on your test script, you're able to kind of cover the necessary steps that you need?
I found that it actually complements the moderated discussions because it helps me identify directional leads or things that I can dig deeper on. So if there's a screen that, folks are getting through pretty easily in moderated sessions, but are not unmoderated, that's something that is interesting. That's a contrast between the two approaches. And that's something for me to dig deeper into when I actually have, discussions. So there's a lot to learn there about how language can be a barrier for users, or how presentation can be a barrier for users. You can also do like really light A/B testing to get a sense of whether or not one group that's being shown one stimuli is performing better than another. So the unmoderated testing, I would say, is more so directionally complementary to the total research approach than it is a standalone benefit, because again, it's just really good for giving you a directional read and allowing you to learn more without having to dedicate more time in those moderated discussions.
Interesting. And so how often are you kind of using them in tandem? So both unmoderated, moderated. How does that kind of work in your world?
Yeah, it depends on the availability of the stimuli and the fidelity of the stimuli. It's like if I have a click-through prototype or a concept, that's not something that I could necessarily take through unmoderated testing, right? But if I have something that's like in a test environment or a higher fidelity prototype that mimics really close to what the intention is for production, then maybe that's something I can take to unmoderated testing. Because there's a high possibility that a user would be able to do their own thing without running into those like very technical errors that come with prototypes and things like that.
Okay. Switching gears here a little bit, one of the things that you had commented on, and then just even the example that you gave, is remote testing kind of allows you to wake up in the morning, create a brief, and have something at the end of the day. How does that impact your relationship with the teams that you work with? How if you're able to get insights, what does that do to your relationship with your teams?
Well, I mean, I'll just speak from personal experience. I definitely see there is a greater sense of trust between myself and the product owners and designers that I work with, because they are expecting me to be able to pull insights pretty quickly and to come back with, if not a valid theme or a validated theme or theory, at least again some directional lead that they can take and make decisions with. And that's in contrast to a prior time when I did research that took weeks and months. It's hard to get people's trust because they're looking at their production schedule and they're saying like, we got to get this thing done by XYZ date, but we're not going to have insights until such and such date, which is super close. Or it was just a lot of there's a lot of trade-offs to be made with research in that environment. And I think I would prefer to have research done before anything is sent out to a user. And there were discussions that were had in my prior experiences where we were deciding whether or not research was going to happen because of time, you know what I mean? Or because the product or design team wasn't really sure like what the value would be of conducting research. So I think it's afforded a lot and enabled a lot of trust to be able to turn insights around so quickly. and it just plays well into the method of it just plays well into the agile method to be able to learn quickly, fail quickly, iterate, and then see if it works.
How so you've been at Slack for a little bit now. How did switching to a remote platform or doing remote testing, how did that enable you to kind of understand your product and your customers? Just from you're new at Slack, you're trying to learn the business, the organization, the users. Yeah. How did that impact your experience there?
Well, I mean, the speed to insights again was the benefit for me, because I was able to take a lot of the things that I was learning and onboarding about our principles and what we value from a user's perspective, and test for myself in the testing that I was doing, to kind of see like why things were the way they were, what happened when the principles were applied, in the manner in which we intend versus not. I was able to like generate my own perspective about our design principles very quickly by seeing them in action. And I was able to get really hands-on with prior research that we've done, to be able to look for it in the testing that I was doing remotely, in a way that I don't think I would have been able to do as quickly in traditional environments where I have to take something into a lab and have those conversations. Again, it's just the time and the volume. I think that's been a benefit, and I was able to come to conclusions more quickly, and come to questions more quickly, and just like have ongoing discussion with other researchers and other product owners and designers about the things that I was learning, so that they could help me build or help me better orient myself into the Slack culture, and really just come to understand why things are the way they are, and what our perspective on how things should be designed is.
Interesting. So I know not everything is always, it doesn't always go smoothly as you learn new skills, as you transition. So can you tell us a little bit about any of the challenges that you ran into, kind of, taking a methodology that you would typically do as an in-person study or an in-lab study, and then trying to move that into a remote version? What are some of the challenges that you ran into?
Yeah, one big challenge that I've run into has been the varied levels of like tech savvy with folks that you talk to. Of course, I think anyone who is a tester or participant on usertesting.com knows enough about tech to be a participant on usertesting.com, right? But different tasks and scenarios in the research environment, or specific to what questions you're trying to answer, concepts may be foreign to folks. They may think that something means one thing in a screener, and then it means something completely different when they get into the research environment. So I think natural, and this is no different from in person, right? It's like sometimes there's just a barrier between people, either in the language or in what your perspective is on different concepts or ideas. So you just have to work through the process of making sure things mean the same to you and whoever you're talking to over the platform, before you get deep. And sometimes that can take a little longer than you intend, especially like if you only have 30 minutes to talk to somebody. You don't want to spend most of that time explaining what you're going to be doing, right? Because you want to get to the insights. So that can be difficult sometimes, because it could result in like, you having a session that doesn't necessarily mean much to you from like a information perspective, and you may need to, grow your recruit, or, talk to more people. But, the benefit on the other side is it is remote. It is somewhat automated, and it is supported by a lot of technology. So having to make those quick shifts in your approach isn't representative of a net new level of effort. It's just quick changes that you can make, and hopefully that'll get you to where you want to be with the information that you gather.
Have you found any methods or types of projects that you would do typically in a lab or in a in-person setting that you wouldn't want to do remote, or that you would kind of have questions about how the results would come back?
Yeah, so I mean, I come from a service design world where a lot of the work that I was doing was oriented around trying to figure out how to improve the delivery of a service to a person from an organization. And one thing that we did a lot was to have folks self-complete their own journey map, which was super helpful in the in-person settings, because it could help us pinpoint and identify where in a service delivery experience the breakdown was from the user's perspective. Then we could take that information back to like see if we could compare it to breakdowns we see in the back end, and really have like a valid, informed perspective on like where issues were occurring, why they were occurring, and what could be done. That's not really an exercise I can see myself doing necessarily over usertesting.com. There's probably an opportunity to adapt it for like an unmoderated session, but then at that point it's like, what's the difference between this and a survey, right? So those kinds of I think those kinds of exercises can be limited by the remote environment, because you just lose the tactile ability to just like, feel a piece of paper with somebody, point to something, and have them react to it, and just like have that conversation. So that's what comes top of mind in response to that question.
Okay. Yeah, there's always the question of what methodology goes where, and when can you how do you use technology, and all these different ideas. So so one of the questions that I wanted to also ask is, how would you kind of coach somebody, or what advice would you give somebody else who's kind of in that same boat where you were, where most of their background is in lab, in person, and now they're kind of moving into a new remote world? What are some of the things that they should think about? What are some of the things that they can read, can study? What kind of helped you along the way?
So I would say, in response to that question, two things: try everything, do something, right? Like there's so many things you can do on user testing specifically, but remotely. And I would say first off, just try everything. Because of course, at the end of the day, like, you're trying to answer key research questions, you're trying to fill gaps in your understanding, and really the method is just a package for you to achieve that goal as a researcher. And if you have the opportunity to use user testing or do some other remote study, I would say just try everything you can. Like, and I mean, even when you're not doing research, right? Like, you're not doing the work. If you're doing the work, like, just test things out with your team, just to get a sense for what can be learned and what can be done with different methods, and then do something. Like we talked about, running into issues where, you might get a couple of sessions that don't quite meet your expectations in terms of information gathering. You could send out a order for recruits that has an error in the screening, and get back some results that you didn't intend, or get back results from people that you didn't intend to talk to. So I would say, like, just, expect the hiccups to happen, but just do something. Keep learning, push out another version, change the screener question, like, just continue to do something. And then the final thing is, there's a book that one of my former managers gave me that I've used over and over again. I mean, I just looked at it today, but User Research Team of One was such a great book. Like, I use it all the time when I run into a wall, when I'm trying to like plan research, or I'm trying to synthesize data in a different way, or think of different approaches to answering questions. I would definitely like hold on to that research team of one as kind of like a researcher Bible, just a quick reference or a refresher if you need to think about how to do something different or get a different answer than maybe you are coming up with the information you have.
Yeah, fantastic book. Big shout out to Leah Booley. I love that book. It was also one that I picked up early. I think one question that I'll kind of finish up on here is, how do you collaborate with other team members? How do you get them involved, or how does remote research allow you to incorporate other team members in a way that you might not have been able to do with in-person stuff?
So three things that come to mind as soon as you ask the question. First of all, observation. Getting folks on these calls as observers is super easy. It plugs right into Zoom. We've got a system where we add it to our team calendars so folks can see like what the planned research sessions are over a period of time. So having that observation tool is super helpful, and then having the shared calendar features that support it make it really easy to just shout out to the team, let them know what's happening, and get them in there so that they can view and come to their own determinations about the sessions as they're happening. So that's the first thing. The second thing is sharing the videos, right? So after you're done, you get these really cool links that you can just drop into chats, drop into channels, direct messages, or embed them in your reports. And that's super cool to have available as evidence. And then the final thing is, so I've even gone the length of like embedding videos directly into reports or to decks. So not only can they click through and view the video, but now I've got it set up to where if I have like a PowerPoint or Google slide or something like that, the video is actually embedded there, and it goes live when you jump into the slide. So everything is super contextually relevant. And if you want to do more exploration, like you can jump back into user testing and look at the whole session. It's super helpful, and it really, I think, is good for allowing folks to come to their own conclusions, but then also getting that buy-in that you need from your other team members who are in product and design on the insights to say like, this is what he heard, this is what his insight was, this is what I heard, and I definitely agree with the recommendation. So that is super helpful.
Awesome. So one final question: is there anything about making that switch from in-person to remote, or your experience doing remote research that I didn't ask you about that you would just like? Okay, one thing that everybody wants to know or should know. You have any final closing thoughts?
The one thing that everyone should know, I don't know. I don't. I'm not going to hold you. I'm not going to hold you guys hostage on LinkedIn Live trying to come up with one. I don't. But I would just say again, try everything. Literally, try everything. If you get into the dashboard and you see all these cool things, just try everything and do something. Just pick one. Just close your eyes and pick an approach. I guarantee that there's going to be something you can learn either about methods or approaches, or even if it's like actual user insights. Try everything, do something.
Okay, I'm gonna actually have to quote you on that because that's a fantastic tagline. So try everything and do something. That's perfect for people getting started.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Deron, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day. Really appreciated talking to you. Loved learning about your move from in-person to remote. Hopefully everybody listening, you got some interesting tidbits out of this. If you want to come and if there's any questions that we didn't answer, we'll make sure that we answer those later today. If you want to reach out to either Deron or myself on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. Would love to chat with anybody or follow up any questions on LinkedIn there. But thank you. This was a fantastic conversation, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Happy Monday, y'all.
Bye, all.